today's topic is about style, aka CSS. Specifically, in Blazor, there are two types of CSS, and I call it global CSS and isolated CSS. Like any SPA, CSS is referenced directly in the index.html. Here what you are seeing is a Blazor application from the template. There are three CSS referenced: Bootstrapper CSS, App CSS, and then assembly name.style.css. The first two are global CSS. They go to static files under CSS folder. Bootstrap CSS is a CSS framework. Let me be frank, I don't know too much about Bootstrap, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. App.css is a vanilla CSS file that provides some predefined styles. For example, there's a style for primary buttons, content, a valid class, and some Blazor Arrow UI related styles. And this CSS demo.styles.css. Oh, by the way, CSS demo is the assembly name. This is the second type, the isolated CSS. And it goes by the naming convention of assembly.styles.css. This file, you would not see it under www root. So where is it? Expand, obj, debug, your framework, scoped CSS, bundle, and you'll see the CSS file there. This is in fact a composed CSS file. Pay attention to these comments, and they can be mapped back to the reader components. And that's where these styles coming down from. Now let's go to the components and take a look at the CSS files. These style files goes with the naming convention component.razor.css. They have to go with those names so that Blazor knows to pick them up and compose the CSS in the obj folder. Why are they called isolated styles? Because the styles defined in these files will only impact the reader page. And I will show you an example to compare these two types. Let's take a look at the global CSS first. Here in the app.css, I'm going to create a class named global CSS demo. Let's set a color that is easy to recognize, red for example. Okay, let's use it. Obviously, since this is a vanilla CSS, you should be able to apply it in HTML file, right? Let's try that first. Here I'm going to throw in a div, content, hello text, class, global CSS demo. To observe that, let me set the auto start to false. And let's see how it looks like. Yep, hello text and color red. Let me change the auto start back. Since this style is global, I should be able to use it inside any Razor page as well. Let's try that in one piece of component. How about counter? So the header of the counter will have the class global CSS demo. Now run it. And let's go to the counter. Red header. Just realized I didn't need to disable the auto start. We can see the text in the HTML being red as well. And that is global CSS. The content is in a static file. Once it's there, you could use it anywhere. Now let's take a look at the isolated CSS. To demo that, I'm going to need a component that includes another component. Index.reader looks good. It has another component, survey prompt. Let me modify the page a little bit. I'm going to put the text, welcome to your new app, into a span tag. Now let's take a look at the survey prompt. Notice it does have several span as well. The one in the middle is outstanding. It will show the text, please take our blah blah blah. Now let's create a new CSS file for index. And I'm going to create a style to set color of green for all the span text. Now both components have span. what I am verifying is that this style will not have impact on the component of survey prompt. In other words, styles for index is isolated only to index component. Let's see if that is the case or not. As you can see, the text in the index is in color of green, but please take care in the survey prompt is still in gray. And that is provided by Blazor CSS isolation. The benefit is that when you need to update a CSS style for one component, you don't need to worry about it break another. That said, it could be a disadvantage as well. Sometimes you do want styles being applied to the children components so that you have this unified styles, right? In our case, for example, we want the color of the span to be green. We want everything to be green. The Blazor implementation has actually considered that. What you will need to do? Actually, two things. First, you'll need to make it a real parent-child. Let me show you what I mean. Your survey is inside the index, but there's no real parent tag for survey prompt. So let's make one, a div. And then we come back to the parent CSS file, index.reader.css, and we append this colon deep pseudo element in front of the style that we want to bleed into the children. Now the style of a span will not only apply to any span inside this component, but also the children components. Let's see it in action. Okay, more in green. Well, it is not that beautiful, but it's more consistent. And that is also very useful when you want to customize a component that is not yours. Okay, that's isolated CSS and how to expand the scope to its children. Now, let's apply what we just learned to build fishcard. Let's take a look at where we were. Everything squashed to the left upper corner. Let's fix the style. The first thing, check the references. Small project like this doesn't need Bootstrap. Let me remove that. If you want, go ahead and delete the files as well. After that, I'm considering put the link to the home page to the right up corner. First thing to consider, is that a global style that we need to use across multiple components? Or is that specific to the component? In this case, the links in the layout, and I don't expect the style to be reused by other components. So I'm going to make it an isolated CSS. By the way, my decision here doesn't matter. You need to ask the questions for yourselves. Let me create a CSS file for the fishcard layout. Come back to the component. We already have a div to work on, which is great. Let me add a class, and let's call it home links. And to the style files, home links aligns text to the right. Now in my mind, the div is going to take the whole space, and the links is going to stay to the right. Let's see if that's the case. Cool. Oh, by the way, CSS sometimes stuck in the cache. What I will do, bring up the development tool by F12. And then if you right click this refresh button, you'll see a new item, empty cache and hard refresh. That one usually refreshes the code to the latest. If then the style is still not what you want, there's probably something wrong in the code. And we got it the first attempt. Now I want to pay attention to the underline. I don't like it because it is too strong a signal that is a link. Hyperlinks usually already in a different color. So I want the underline to show up only when it is hovered over. And I'll show you how to do it. Question number 1, is it global or is it isolated? So I want all the A tag to behave like this, so it is global. And the global CSS goes to the static CSS file, app.css in our case. Firstly, I'm going to say all the A tag, the text decoration to be none. And then I'm going to override it for the text decoration to be underline, but only do it when it is hovered over. Let's see it. Next, let's do a challenge. Center the divs. So basically, I'm going to put the image, the input box, the buttons into the center of the page. This only applies to the fishcard home, so I'm going to make it isolated CSS. What I'm going to do first is to update the fishcard home component to wrap almost everything up inside that one div. I'll give it a class of content, and it wraps up everything that is available. Now let me create a CSS file for the component. And for the content, I want the display mode to be flex. The children elements, the image, the input box, they're going to be stacked up like a column. So that's the direction. Inside the column flow, the main axis is vertical, and the cross axis is horizontal. We want to center the image that goes with the cross axis. So here I'm going to say align items to the center. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, search for a tutorial for Flexbox. Come back to what we did. Let's see what will happen. Ta-da! Everything goes to the center. But I don't like the buttons. They stack up. Let's see how to fix that. Buttons are a little bit loose at this moment. Let's wrap them up inside one div. I'll give it a class of button list. Now let's make button list another Flexbox. And this time I want the buttons to flow like a row instead of a column. Since the button list will be in the center horizontally already, I don't think we need to do anything else. Let's check it out. Yep. Now, bonus content. What? There's anything beyond the center div? I think this is at least as good as center div. Variables. I am so want to share this with you, that you can define variables in CSS. Let's do one in the global CSS so you get some feelings. We usually define a list of variables in this column root pseudo class. Variables in CSS starts with the double dash. Let's give it a name, gap normal. Imagine something else like a gap small or gap large for different values. Let's say gap normal equals 32 pixel. Now we can use it. Let's say I want to add some gaps in front of the button list. I'm come down to this button list class. And I say margin top. And this is how to reference the value for the variable. You use this var function and give it the name of the variable. Let's see it. 32 pixel in front of the button list. How about we change the value of gap normal to 8 pixel and the margin top changed accordingly. Here I only have one reference to the variable. The advantage of reading style will show up when you have multiple references. The variables also make it super easy to do multiple themes, much more simple than it was. What you need to do is to predefine a set of colors as variables and provide another CSS file to override the values. If you ever noticed, www.codewithsar.com, although it's not in Blazor, used that to support multiple themes, and you know where to get the source code of it. Alright my friend, that's it for the styles. I hope you enjoyed the content. Give me a thumb up, share it if you like it. We're probably going to talk about the backend next time. Keep coding, keep improving, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.